When you think of a perfect burger, what comes to mind? You would be surprised to know that people from different decades have varying flavor choices. So here we are to deconstruct 100 years of burgers down for you. Starting off strong with the classic hamburger. Introduced in the year 1910s, this hamburger would soon become the backbone of our American fast food industry. Classic hamburger can be considered the brainchild of Louis Lasson, who assembled a hamburger during the early 20th century because a customer asked for a quick and delicious meal. He only had ingredients used for steak sandwiches, so he put together a simple bread and broiled ground beef burger in haste. Little did Lasson know, he had just created the first hamburger. By 1910, burgers made out of ground beef and buttered buns turned into a national phenomenon. Hamburgers were truly a local hit in New Haven, where Louis Lunch Eatery had added its creation onto their menus. Other states soon discovered how simple and easy hamburgers were to make, which meant every local diner started adding the dish to their menu. You see, the classic hamburger had a lot going for it because people are enticed by new recipes that are unique. No one had ever thought about how delicious broiled ground beef between toasted bread could be, but now that they had tasted the meal, hamburgers were all they could think about. It is safe to say a classic plain hamburger represents this decade of burgers, as condiments and sauces were yet to be introduced in the recipe. What we found interesting was the burger patty being broiled instead of grilled or fried. To each decade their own. Talking about interesting preparation methods, the White Castle slider from the 1920s had a unique recipe that might have you intrigued. It is no surprise that chefs created creative versions of what we popularly know as burgers, and there is no better example than White Castle sliders. Locals in Wichita, Kansas were introduced to a set of iconic mini burgers made using steamed beef patties with caramelized onions, Roma tomatoes, pickles, lettuce, and cheddar cheese. Calling the sliders peculiar would be correct because people had never consumed any dish like this before. You might be wondering who came up with the idea of mini burgers. Well, a family-owned business opened by Billy Ingram named White Castle introduced sliders onto their menu. They aptly named the little burgers White Castle sliders, as they were only found at this diner in Kansas. White Castle Diner advertised the sliders to locals as an easy-to-eat and fulfilling meal sold by the sack that anyone could buy because of how affordable the prices were. Now, the 1920s were not the cheapest decades, but the White Castle slider was sold at a mere 5 cents per piece. This is what you call a steal. Sliders quickly found their place in people's hearts as a favorite food, which urged several restaurants to add similar burgers to their menu. Eventually, the White Castle sliders started a trend of serving mini burgers, which many diners and businesses adopted, making the burger truly iconic. White Castle sliders were just the beginning of affordable burgers, because the Oklahoma fried onion burger emerged during the Great Depression as a solution for people impacted by meat rationing. The 1930s was a decade ridden with economic hardships and perils beyond what we can ever imagine. Even with today's inflation, finding a cheap meal makes us feel joy like no other. So imagine when diners started serving a 20-cent fried onion burger. Nicknamed the Depression Burger, grilled fried onion sandwich gave its locals anything but depression by meticulously being served as a tasty, affordable meal. Tasty and affordable were definitely not two words put together in the same sentence during the Great Depression, so you can imagine why fried onion burger was an instant success. As the name suggests, people first encountered this meal in El Reno, Oklahoma, being served at a diner on Route 66. Hamburger Inn Diner encountered an issue with rationing meat adequately during the Great Depression and came up with the innovative idea to create a half onion and half ground beef mix between buns. This allowed them to lessen the use of beef per burger and still provided a meal that filled stomachs. Trust us when we say the recipe of this burger was truly unique. Many flocked from all Oklahoma to have a bite of the fried onion burger because it was unlike anything they had ever seen. Onions are an integral part of burgers today, but 80 years back, this combination was quite the new invention. Perhaps the most iconic burger emerged in the 40s, as in 1948. In-N-Out Burgers officially opened in California. In-N-Out is not a name foreign to any of us today. Till this day, they are serving some of the best hamburgers in America. But how did their burgers fare against others when the joint was newly opened? In-N-Out realized the importance of fast food delivery and used this to their advantage to pioneer a drive-thru concept for their customers. This decision would turn out to be a great success as the presence of a drive-thru attracted loads of people to In-N-Out. Locals had no idea how great the burgers would be as they simply enjoyed the concept of a fast delivery. But once people started trying their hamburgers, a sense of enlightenment struck them. In-N-Out was serving some of the best burgers in town with a sauce they regarded as the secret In-N-Out sauce. News quickly spread in town that the new burger joint with a drive-thru has some of the sauciest burgers out there. Soon enough, their simple yet delicious burgers, especially the double-double, became iconic on the West Coast. This was the decade when diners started including condiments in burger recipes, and the In-N-Out sauce made their burgers stand out amongst all the competition. Instead of visiting In-N-Out burgers for fast delivery, people were now lining up outside their store to buy a cheesy, saucy double patty burger that wrapped all the funky flavors of the 40s in it. As hamburgers became a staple food in American diners, chefs were always looking to switch up recipes. In came the iconic 50s steam burger encapsulating the flavor of diner-style cheeseburgers with a twist. Simply put, the recipe combined notes of beef cheese and a bun just like any other hamburger, but played around with the ingredients and preparation method. Steam burger was made using white cheddar cheese instead of yellow, had a steamed meat patty with a little sear, and was served on a Kaiser roll. As for the taste, well, it tasted much richer and smoky than your average hamburger. Steam burgers made for a great meal after a long day of work or on a day when your family was craving hamburgers. We say this because the burger originates from a small town in Detroit called Farmington Hills, where Green's Hamburger started serving them for just 16 cents apiece. Economically, having a steam burger made a lot of sense, and the taste was good enough to make the meal a bargain for anyone. Steam burgers gained traction during the 50s, which led to many diners serving their variants of a steamed patty, each with different cheeses or condiments. Today, it is very rare to see diners serving steamed meat patties, but during this decade, it became quite a common practice for people. What was once considered niche turned into a trusted method of creating burgers. Chefs back in the day were extremely creative with ensuring people never got tired of burgers. Their dedication to the craft led to the invention of the bacon cheeseburger in the 60s. Adding crispy bacon to a hamburger might seem pretty normal to you right now, but 50 years back, such an addition to a burger was astounding. A&W restaurants were the first to introduce a bacon cheeseburger on their menu in 1963. A&W was an established food chain serving delicious food for years to their loyal customers. The chairman of A&W, Dave Mulder, was having a cheeseburger in his office when he thought to himself that bacon would be a perfect addition to the meal. He streamlined the idea and provided his chefs with the instructions to add a bacon burger on their menus. Alas, our beloved bacon burger was born. Unsurprisingly, adding crispy bacon to a cheeseburger struck a chord with customers as hundreds of people flocked to the restaurant in hopes of eating Mulder's creation. It is believed that adding bacon derived a new favorite in cheeseburgers that combined savory flavors with a satisfying crunch. This is the reason why bacon cheeseburgers are still popular today as they were decades ago, with the only difference being that every respectable diner in America has this burger on their menu, not just A&W restaurants. Some burgers are so well received that they represent a food chain just by their name. The Whopper, introduced by Burger King in the 70s, was a hallmark in famous burgers America encountered in the last 100 years. You may be wondering how Burger King created one of the most famous burgers ever? The answer is simple: a big size and even bigger marketing schemes. The Whopper had a staggeringly large size that meant you were getting more food for a lesser price. 70s saw a rise in inflation and fast food prices went up, yet Burger King maintained their prices, selling a Whopper for only 37 cents. Advertisements ran all across the states that Burger King was serving a meal that had a larger size and multiple toppings that made for a heartier alternative to the standard fast food burger. That too for just 37 cents. A good taste paired with strong advertising made the Whopper a huge success for this fast food chain. But what impact did the Whopper have on the general burger scheme in America? After the Whopper, fast food chains increased the serving size of their burgers. And though they were not as big as Burger King's meal, burgers in America definitely got bigger. Brace yourself as we are about to dive into a burger that tasted good but was not necessarily a fan favorite in the 80s. We are talking about veggie burgers that started a debate on what makes a burger a real burger debate. In the 1980s, food joints witnessed the need of creating a menu that catered to vegetarians and people seeking healthier options. Paul Wenner owned a restaurant named the Garden House in Oregon, where he primarily served vegetarian food. He felt as though people were missing out on the taste of hamburgers because of their diet option, and thus created the Garden Burger. Very similar to today's mock meat burgers, veggie burgers were made using vegetables and grains like chickpea and wheat gluten to create a mock meat patty. Plant-based burgers gained popularity during this decade, primarily because of Wenner's idea to add a vegetarian burger to his menu. Multiple diners picked up on the trend to add plant-based burgers on their menus because they saw a demand in the market for such items. While the taste is not exactly what prompted people to add the burger on their menus, they eventually accepted the possibility of a burger with no real meat. That is when the real magic started, as chefs started playing around with different flavors to create a burger patty that tastes exactly like meat without any real beef used. Pretty awesome, right? Our list would be incomplete if we did not mention how McDonald's played a role in innovating burgers through the 90s. In the 1990s, McDonald's introduced the Arch Deluxe, which targeted adults with a more sophisticated flavor palette. No, literally, McDonald's paid a fine dining chef named Andrew Selvaggio and tasked him with creating a burger that would appeal to sophisticated palates. Andrew Selvaggio delivered just that by creating a burger that featured a special mustard mayo sauce and a fancy pepper named Ooh. Mentioning the Arch Deluxe on this list is important because this recipe was the first step a fast food joint took towards introducing gourmet food items on their menu. Although Arch Deluxe was eventually discontinued from all stores across America, many people still remember how heavily marketed the item was. Can you believe McDonald's spent an astonishing $200 million on the sandwich before it got discontinued? The 1990s were a truly remarkable time for burgers because McDonald's realized that just because hamburgers were considered a fast food item now, they could not be tuned to be fine dining items. Arch Deluxe may have not been as successful as they anticipated, but it definitely started a conversation on how fast food customers could be provided with a premium taste at a faster speed and cheaper rates. Truly a burger to remember when thinking about previous decades. Finally, out of the 1900s, let's talk about recent burger trends that have stood out in previous decades, starting with Wendy's Baconator. Introduced in April of 2007, Wendy's Chief Executive Officer Kerry Anderson highlighted the need for burgers that appealed to the 18 to 34-year-old demographic. What better way to do that than create a hamburger with loads of bacon and a hefty amount of cheese? This decade saw a trend of going back to the basics, and Wendy followed along by making an ode to the bacon burger from the 60s. Though Baconator was not an exact replica of bacon burgers because of how upsized the quantity of cheese and bacon was within the cheeseburger. One thing is for sure, burgers in the 2000s looked like some of the unhealthiest cheeseburgers we have encountered in the last 100 years. But you know what they say? All the unhealthy calories are worth it if the taste is good, and the Baconator aced the taste meter. A hearty, cheesy, and bacon-filled burger turned out to be a dream food for many young people who would be craving a snack late at night. In stark comparison to the Baconator, gourmet burgers became popular in the 2010s. While McDonald's did have a go at a gourmet item in the 1900s, the trend did not exacerbate until the early 2010s. The rise of gourmet hamburgers and finer burger chains was a direct response to consumer demands for ethical and environmentally friendly hamburgers. This meant many restaurants had to experiment with several different ingredients to see which would taste the best and look the best on menus. Restaurants like Red Robin were leading the trend when it came to such burgers because of their high quality and practice. Gourmet burgers featured high-quality ingredients and creative toppings, from guacamole and onion straws to specialty cheeses and sauces that were created from scratch to reduce waste and enhance taste. Sounds a little too sophisticated for your average hamburger, right? Well, that was the whole point of gourmet burgers. Appealing to adults who found a classic cheeseburger to be too boring or childish meant accessing a bigger customer demographic and earning a good buck out of selling fancy burgers. 2010s are considered to have a boom in sales of burgers with fancier names as compared to just cheeseburgers. Many people also believe diners went out of fashion because of such gourmet burger joints. It was definitely a trend that impacted the types of burgers we have today. Last on this list is our current decade, which is popularizing build-your-own-burger trends. 2020 is all about doing whatever you feel like doing, and that ideology is applied to creating burgers too. Treating burgers like sandwiches, many burger joints started advertising a customizable burger that you can do anything with. Joints allow you to choose from with a variety of buns, meats, cheeses, and toppings to create what you think is the perfect burger. Starkly different from other decades where distinct tastes and flavors each represent a specific time period in history. We are not going to lie, however, the idea of customizing a perfect burger is pretty appealing, considering whichever burger customers end up with, they will love it because you built it yourself. It is a foolproof concept because of this eliminates previous issues. Diners and joints have faced with burgers like catering to vegetarians and adding newer items like bacon or different cheeses to a burger. While it seems like a perfect burger option, one thing we definitely miss from past burgers are the price points. Long gone are the 15-cent grilled onion burgers and the steam burger that you could buy 6 of in just 96 cents. Now a build-it-yourself burger on average costs $12 to $15 because customization is considered a premium perk. So 2020 has provided us with burgers that look seemingly perfect, but they are not the most affordable burgers on this list. Now that was one cheesy list reminiscing about what burgers have looked like over 100 years. Which decade stood out to you? Let us know and subscribe for more.